Hello and welcome to the panel where we're talking about creator economy for teachers, especially about the blurring lines between edtech communities content. My name is Sajith Pai. I work with Blume Ventures, an early stage seed fund focusing on tech investments. Education or edtech is very dear to us. We led the first check in an academy, edtech unicorn. We're early investors in Classplus, whose co-founder and CEO Mukul is here. What Mukul? Mukul's a derivatives trader turned edtech founder. He worked 2 years trading fixed income securities before quitting in 2015, along with his high school buddy Baswat. They tried various experiments and finally started Classplus in 2018. Think of Classplus as a Shopify of Indian edtech. They help mom and pop tutoring shops, coaching centers, or tuition centers in India get online. Mikhil runs FrontRow. FrontRow is India's masterclass in a way, but it's much more than that. They help students learn passions. They teach stuff like cricket, DJing, music, all of that. We founded FrontRow last year in kind of early when the pandemic was just starting out. They've grown furiously since then. Before that, Mikhil founded a startup called Photograph AI, which was acquired by Zest Money, where he worked. And interestingly, I found this, and it's very interesting while researching that both Mukul and Mikhil, Mukul worked at Futures First, and Mikhil interned there. So that's interesting. So both of you have something in common there. Yeah. And finally, Danish. Danish is, like I say, is probably doing India's youngest edtech startup, all of 3 months old. He's India's only, probably, or at least the first for sure, and one of the world's few and probably world-renowned charisma coaches. I didn't know what that was till I got introduced to Danish. Danish grew up in small town India, Indore, and then went on to successful careers at Yahoo, Microsoft, Nielsen, and now he runs Charisma School. Danish is going to tell us more about that, but very, very briefly, a little bit about the context that you're in. India is fast emerging as one of the most exciting edtech markets, and with what's happening in China, where they've had a complete battering of the stocks, including powerhouses such as TAL and New Oriental kind of collapsing today. India is really the shining star on the horizon. And of the funding that's gone into edtech in India, about $1.5 billion in this half year alone, a substantial amount of that has gone into this particular segment, which is really about the creator economy, okay, where both creators, influencers, and teachers are kind of merging together. We're going to discuss all of this. We're going to discuss these blurring lines. And we're going to discuss what's happening in this super exciting subsector in education. I'm going to kick this off with a question to Danish. Okay, Danish, you're a creator now wanting to kind of leverage the power of edtech, power of education. Okay, just take us a little bit through the challenges that you've had moving from the creator hat, the influencer hat, to wearing the edtech hat. What's it been like? What are the decisions you had to make? How did you think about starting up?
Right. Thank you, Sajith. So before I get into this, let me tell you how it all started. So I was a super shy, introverted kid while I was growing up, just like a lot of people are. And I ended up solving this problem for myself over a period of 6 to 7 years, in terms of improving and enhancing my social skills. And eventually, I helped my friends solve it. And then eventually, I started solving it for my clients. So that's when I realized that I was able to find sort of like a pedagogy and a curriculum which helps delivering this outcome where people can really enhance their charisma quotient. Now, coming back to a decision that why I should sort of become a creator and try to go the platform route, the biggest challenge I had for many years initially when I started my career, for first 4 to 5 years, I was pretty happy being an individual creator, doing one-on-one classes, doing some boot camps and some seminars. And with the edtech revolution that kind of happened in India in the last 3 years, I saw this opportunity because the number one question that I asked myself that the problem that I'm trying to solve, or the skill set that I'm trying to, pass on to the people, is it complex enough? So there has to be some level of complexity. And then there has to be a question that needs to answer if this is a painkiller or a vitamin, right? And also, is it a replicable formula? So, the curriculum, is it getting results to everybody with no exceptions? Of course, with certain permutation combinations. And is there a potential that it will not become a commodity in the long run? So, for example, if I'm teaching music or if I'm teaching guitar as a skill set, the chances are that it may get commoditized. And also the question was, do I have a strong enough brand to start with? So when I realized that the answers to all of these questions are in yes, that's when I decided to take the plunge, because then I have a unique proposition to take to the market. And also another question was that, is this idea a lifestyle business, or is it VC investable? Is it having potential to grow fast enough? Is it scalable? So the answer to that question for me was also yes. And that's when I decided to take a plunge, and I found my co-founder, whose name is Akib, who is an ex-Whitehead junior director. And then we decided to do it together. And he has been my friend for the last 5 years. So that's how it started.
Fascinating.
You're on mute, Sajith.
Yeah. So I'm just going to use this to kind of spring to Mikhil. Mikhil, similarities there. You deal with a lot of folks like Danish, except that Danish is choosing to go it alone, but all of them instead work on you and work with you because you're a platform. What have been the challenges you've seen in having these non-traditional teachers, like many of whom are, like, say, cricketers or DJs, who are not teachers, teach? Just take us through a little bit of the challenges you've had, bringing them aboard, getting them to teach.
So actually, I would like to explain that with a small analogy. So imagine, you have been doing VC investing for a time, but suddenly, one day I come to you and I ask you, how to become the best investor of the world. To be frank, you have, through the journey that you have seen over time, everything is in your head, but the articulation and, converting all that knowledge into curriculum or a proper delivery mechanism, that is one gap that we saw, when we started working with creators. And especially when you work with top of the class, they are when people say these people are artists. So what is the meaning of artists? When you talk to them, you realize the process is same. It's hard work. It's some sort of what do you say? It's some sort of a grit that they have that they have gone through, and they have just tried to perfect it bit by bit. It's not an overnight success. So it's a process, and what learners actually want to learn is how to replicate that process. But when we go to a Arijit Singh, or when we go to Amit Trivedi, when we ask them how you have come here, how you have became Amit Trivedi, then the answer generally is I have been I can't articulate it, or it's tough to write it down a paper. So just what we have figured out, that we actually have to build that flywheel. We have to build that pedagogy with them. We have to talk to them in terms of their life experiences. We have to talk to them in terms of anecdotals. And I think what FrontRow has eventually cracked, and believe me, it has not been a straightforward journey, but I think that is what we have cracked in the end. And I think that is the support that every creator needs. They have everything in their mind, but if we give them a engine of converting that knowledge to a pedagogy or a curriculum, that is everything, what they need. And I think this was one of the learnings or challenges, you can say, that we have seen, but this works.
Got it. So just a query, do you end up having to work with them, dial into pedagogy, or do the creators bring that the kind of schema of learning, the structure, the lessons? Do you end up creating that as well with the educators?
So if you talk about trainers or trainers or influencers, and I think you have named the whole session very well. The line is a very blurred line. If you talk to them, some of them are actually amazing teachers. Some of them actually know how to build the curriculum, and we have met a decent chunk of them. And that's why even in the celebrity business, or even in the influencer ecosystem, you have seen a lot of people are actually already teaching or taking workshops. Danish is a very good example of that. He has actually traveled that journey. Some of them are at a level where we actually need to help them a lot. where like, if we ask them like, what are these chords, or like, how to come up with this choreography, or like, how to master a straight drive, it's impossible for them to like, actually, make you walk through the process. But when you talk to them in terms of anecdotes, or when you talk to them, how did you actually try to like, how did you actually try to like, play this unplayable shot, or how did you actually like, came up with this tune, how did you actually came up with this score? When they actually tell you the story, it's easier for us to like, convert that into a curriculum. So yeah, so the answer to that is like, it's a mix and match. You have to figure out like, which creator is what, and like, accordingly you have to like, you have to deal with them. So in terms of like, in terms of exact answer to what you asked, we have basically three kind of buckets in which like, we put creators. Some of them just like come on the board and like, they just need a platform to start delivering. Some of them like, needs little bit of hand holding, but I would still say like, it's a very minimal little bit of hand holding that we give them. And third people are like, somewhere in the between. The effort is not that high, but you still need to hand hold them. What is like, what we have realized actually even beyond this is, if you see a lot of YouTube content, this content is available for free on YouTube. But when we actually talk to consumers and ask them like, why don't you learn this on YouTube, or like, why this YouTube content is not enough, what actually we end up coming, what they end up like, coming back with is, somehow that's not structured into a pedagogy. So I think the biggest piece missing to any, what do you say, like, converting an influencer or converting a creator to a teacher or instructor is like, building that engine of pedagogy or structure or curriculum. And that is what like, we end up making. But yeah, to answer your question, it's a slightly blurred line. Sometimes we have to spend more time, sometimes we have to spend less time.
Very well put. Very well put. Give me a good flavor. Okay, Mukul. It's interesting because I know a little bit about the business, and I know that you started out having these very traditional mom and pop tutoring stores, right? IIT, JEE coaching, and CLAT coaching, and what have you. But over the last few months, maybe a year, begin to see a distinct trend. I know there are photographers about your platform. I know there's a yoga guru or two about your platform, etc. So it's interesting. So you and your business straddles both traditional tutors as well as these passion tutors, so to say. Just take us through, give the audience a flavor of what have you seen, because in terms of behavior of these tutors, how do they use the tools? Have you found certain challenges? How does your team work a little bit with them? Just give us a little flavor. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think so a lot of genesis of this goes back to 2016-17, which was a watershed moment for Edtech, and it was never realized. But Edtech was completely different pre-Geo and post-Geo. Now, what it did was that for the first time, internet became so cheap in the country that it could be used by the masses as a productivity tool. And that is how it all started. Like that entire time was taken over by demonetization. Nobody realized this, but we began to see the offshoots of this in early 2017. And then in 2018, it had become pretty mainstream with some segment of exams. Actually, something like a chartered accountancy exam in India had already started going on. All the academics was sold through pen drives and all in India. And a beautiful thing that happened throughout this time was that most of the exams in India, like the super revered exams for which everybody goes to a mom and pop tutoring center out there, most of the exams in India actually went from a pen and paper to an online system, and which is a large thing because India probably has more exam givers than any other country in the world. Now, it was absolutely beautiful how we went from an offline system to an online system within 2 years. Everyone deserves applause for that, right? And then, so that is the time when I think educators started getting a first, when I say educators, academic educators started getting a first thing about how they can use leverage online, and online is not their enemy, right? It can actually complement them to grow outside their geographic base or to give their students a better learning experience, also launch an hybrid experience in addition to their classrooms. I'm a big fan of classrooms, by the way. I don't think that any amount of technology or anything, nothing can replace the buzz and the adrenaline you get into a classroom, right? And I think that is that peer advantage and the peer comparison that you do when you're out there. I think that is one of the biggest drivers for learning. So, but yeah, we also realized that online can be online as an engagement tool, as a post classroom engagement tool was turning out to be really good. And then over time, what we have seen is that actually academic educators are nothing different from content creators. They create content every day when they start delivering a lesson. They've been creating content for the last so many years. What has fashionably been dubbed as cohort-based courses today is nothing but how a classroom has always been run. It is just a new age word for it, right? And realize that you can call it whatever, but this has already been done before. And then we realized that the boundaries of between an educator and content creator are less, right? We try to define them very hard, but it's not very different. The second thing that we've learned over the last 12 to 24 months is that students and learners are no different. Students are essentially learners who are trying to learn academic stuff in stereotypical language. But as being pointed out earlier, like if I want to become the best investment guy in the country, I would actually go and learn from a great investment guy, right? And in very simple languages, it is nothing but taking tuition from a star guy, right? So all this language and wordplay is what you have realized has just come now, but it is essentially the same thing that has been happening all throughout the last 2 decades. And that is where we think there's hardly any boundary, right? A great content creator, a great educator, a great learner of any discipline actually behave in a very similar way, right? In fact, we recently did a survey with the students, and we realized a very similar feedback. So yeah, I think that is what pushed us. And yes, still today, predominantly we are a platform for academic educators in India to go and launch their online teaching businesses, immaterial whether they have an online offline presence or their online presence. What do they teach? And essentially, you need tools to teach. Like you need something for live class, you need something for sharing content, you need something for conducting assessments. You need something to collect payments, right? You need something to track performances. And instead of using multiple tools to actually separately and coming out of this, we said that why can't this go under a single platform? And we also allowed these educators to maintain their entrepreneurship because this is the brand that they've built over the last decades, right? And that is where Classplus actually came into play. So I don't think we did any rocket science. We just
got it. So
what was being done in the market, we just help that be done better. Right?
Yeah. No, Mukul, that's interesting, fascinating. And one point, what you said was particularly interesting was there's no real difference in behavior between the academic tutors and the passion tutors. So that kind of came interestingly strongly in your point. So that I thought was particularly fascinating. We'll double click on it. But I just want to get off segue to Danish now. So Danish, a query, and I want to ask you about a few of the decisions you took, right? To kind of illustrate the dilemma that the creator has. So one is, of course, I'm going to make you very uncomfortable and ask you, why didn't you join, say, something like FrontRow? So sorry, so why did the go it alone? Okay. So second, what was the decision on pricing, for example? Like, so what is the pricing that you're setting? So take us through about so these two decisions. Take us through the decision of the class size and the delivery. And in doing so, I think it'll be great for us to get a sense of how you're thinking about it.
Right. Perfect. So, so let's take example of a platform like Masterclass of FrontRow or Skillshare, right? So when you go there, there is a certain kind of skill set that requires multiple formats to ensure learning outcomes, right? So it's okay if I just want to have an introduction and I can take a Martin Scorsese class or someone's class on Masterclass, for example, and it still need to go deep. And if I really want to get advanced, I can't really make a movie out of it, right? I still need a lot of information. So the learning is not continued. Another thing is for certain things, you need cohort-based learning. So for example, if we take example of Charisma School, the new user who would come to us might take a Charisma masterclass similar to FrontRow, but then he will sign up for a community where it will be ongoing, where he can ask all sort of questions on a day-to-day basis. And the best person, in a way, I would be responding, a team of eventually when we scale, a team of charisma coaches will be responding to him, so that when he embarks on that journey, right, he still gets the exact same advice from the same mentor. So for example, I can't continuously get advice from a Martin Scorsese or somebody, all those mentors who are on FrontRow as an example. So for us, the idea was that can we really take a person maybe who has very shy, introverted, not that great on a social skill set level, and can transform him into a Shah Rukh Khan or an opera, right? That's the goal. And so when we take a person in the platform, we ensure that he gets everything that is needed. So then he will take a boot camp where we will take him into more deeper, right? Which could be a weekend boot camp and so on and so forth. So there are multiple. So in a way, we are covering cohorts. In a way, we will cover one-on-one. In a way, we'll cover everything which is required in terms of a pedagogical approach or a format to ensure that outcome. And that's why we are going vertical specific, right? Because that's when we can ensure that. So that was one thing that we thought. And the thing is, Another thing is that a lot of content is not searchable and indexable. For example, if I take a Gordon Ramsay masterclass on cooking, now I'm at a grocery store, I want to make a certain recipe. I can't search for that particular recipe on the masterclass platform, right? Because it's in that big 1 hour, 2 hour setup, I have to go there. So it's not like YouTube, right? So I might go on YouTube to get that faster access. In our case, we'll have a world's largest repository of all those FAQ video questions that are being, sort of asked, almost like a video Quora version of social skills enhancement. So eventually we want to become the search engine of social skills. So if you think of it, all these major platforms like YouTube is a search engine for video, Pinterest is a search engine for lifestyle, Quora is for generic advice.
Got you. So I'm just going
to
come in there.
We want to become a search engine for anybody who thinks so.
Sure. No, I got you. Very well explained.
Yeah.
So just take us through the pricing. Like typically, how did you think about pricing and how did you think about class size? Like, are these live cohort-based classes? Mm-hmm. Like, just take us through maybe a minute about this.
Right. Yeah. Right. So for us, initially, the pricing for our masterclass is $99 and for the boot camp, it is $499 because since we are approaching a very, very specific niche. And for example, let me give an example. Although charisma sounds like a very specific niche, maybe a few 100,000 people out there, but there is a community on YouTube called Charisma on Command, which has 4.5 million people enhance their charisma. And that channel posts only one video a week, 2 videos a month. So they're just sitting there waiting for more content. There's no content. So we initially want to target these people and just get them from those buckets because they're hungry for an authority to take them through on that journey. So that's an example. Again, on the pricing, eventually we want to go on a community subscription. So masterclass is initially just to get the people in, but then once they get into community, they have to pay for the community as well. So initially it could be $10, right? But eventually the community will become the product. So they have to pay $99. Masterclass may become free, or it may eventually become like a freemium product once we move to the app. Yeah.
Fascinating. I love the GTM idea you gave of tapping this particular charisma on command community. So that was particularly fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to I do have a question for you, but I'm just going to go to Mikhil. Mikhil, in terms of what Danish's decision is, I'm going to actually ask you now, like, what do you think about the pricing, $99? What do you think about this one? Like, how would you kind of say, is it fair? Yeah.
Can I just interject before Mikhil answers?
Yeah.
We will be initially marketing to US and UK and more evolved online markets because charisma, just like coding, is a sort of has a global appeal. So our initial customers will be the US, UK. We won't be really launching in India at all, for the first 1 year. So this pricing is purely from a market point of view.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Mikhil, on how Danish is thinking about it before I ask you?
No, I actually like what you're going to actually ask about the pricing and the decision how to how we try to price it or how we try to monetize it, and what Danish answered. I would like to just add a little bit more how we think of it, how the framework works. And then then actually come to the pricing, because then it's easy to understand. So as Mukul was explaining, there is no comparison to the classroom education. And actually he's right. Like, there's a reason for that, because when you go in classroom, it's not only the instructor who is actually teaching you, but there are lots of other things which keeps on going. And interesting thing with classroom education is it continues even beyond classroom. For the whole 24 hours which you come out, like, that you come out of the classroom, you actually keep thinking about it. You call your friends. Sometimes you do, like, off classroom study. Sometimes you actually make fun of some of the topics that you studied in the class. And that is like, that is how this becomes a muscle memory. And when we started FrontRow, actually from surface, it looks like masterclass, it looks like Skillshare, but we judiciously decided not to do that. What we actually wanted to do was actually try to replicate the whole university ecosystem online. So imagine if you have to recreate Harvard, what will you do? You will have 20 Nobel Prize winners and they will become your star instructors. But at same point of time, apart from those 20 Nobel Prize winners, you will have 300 amazing educators. But this will still, if you go back to your college life, this will still constitute to 20% of your life, and 80% will be like, you having fun, you doing extracurricular activities, and that is actually community part of it. And when we thought, like, actually this is something which is even more important when it comes to non-academic learnings, and that is how we have built FrontRow. So anybody who wants to, like, just take 101s, they come, they learn from Amit Trivedi and Neha Akkad. It's a very affordable price that any Indian can afford. And I'll tell you, like, why we came up with that thesis, because I just, like, started asking. I've actually grown up in, like, more than 10 cities, because my father's in Air Force, and every third year we used to shift places, and every time it used to be a small town. So I have, like, lots of friends there, and when I asked them, like, I realized that the initial and, like, entry barrier is very high, because when it comes to non-academic skills, they have tried things, they have gotten cheated, sometimes they have not been able to learn few things, and some of the users have gotten, like, good experience also. It's a very mixed experience. So that's why we wanted to give them a flavor of what FrontRow is, and they come on the platform, they pay somewhere between $8 to $10. That is that is 500 to 700 rupees, Indian rupees, which is very extremely affordable for an Indian audience. Once they have a good experience with, these celebrity courses, they actually end up a lot of time on the application. That is absolutely free. The whole community is free. In the community, they can jam together, they can ask feedback, they can give feedback, they participate in competition, and done a ton of different activities. Actually, a super user end up spending more than 40-45 minutes every day on the application. And once, like, and this is journey for, like, most of the people. And once, like, they start doing something in the community, when they want to learn more, when they want to learn something deeper, now that is not, as Danish explained, that is not possible to do that with Amit Trivedi, that is not possible to do that with Neha. So what these guys do is they actually take small classroom, like, what, as Mukul explained, like today's cohort based classes, they take small cohort based classes with amazing other instructors who are not big celebrities but are amazing instructors. Imagine top professor of some offline academy or Indian Idol finalists. So these are the other instructors who are also on the platform. So it actually replicates that, and those courses are slightly higher price. Those are like $50 in terms of price. I hope, like, that more or less answered and explained why we did it.
No, this is very useful. Yeah. So I just want to move to Mukul. Mukul, so I know that you earn not just SaaS revenue, but you also have a flourishing marketplace where tutors sell content. So I want to just ask, which is becoming a very, very important driver. And so this marketplace of content, videos, lessons that tutors put out for their students. Do you find that these passion teachers put out as much content as the academic tutors? Do you need to kind of handhold them a little bit more? So take us a little bit through how, for example, these tutors interact with students, monetize, etc. It'd be great to kind of hear that.
I think that's one place where non-academic creators would differ in an apples to apples comparison with, let's say, academic creators. Right? The forms of content might be very different. For example, in academic creators, academic educators or creators, how you call it, something like a notes is a very valuable, right? And historically, there have been shops in Indian localities which have been just selling notes, right? And that might be done digitally today. But in non-academic creators, I don't think that is a content format that has ever gotten in place over there. Similarly, assessments might not be there. Similarly, there might be a more focus towards, let's say, a live learning kind of a model than this. Then I know some subcategories in non-academic creators where communities work really well more than other things, right?
Correct.
So I think the content formats are very peculiar category by category. In fact, even within the non-academic creators, we've not seen one content format being universally relevant. And so something like a stand-up comedy will be very different to something like a photography or something like a calligraphy or something like a Microsoft Excel, right? Whatever it is. So I think that's one place that we're looking out. But I don't think that there will be one content format that will be universal to all the non-academic creators. And the reason why I find is that one, the curriculum structure is not defined, unlike the academics thing, right? In academics, you have an exam, so you know what is going to come in. Secondly, the motivation for learning might be completely different here. In academic space, everyone is chasing just one thing, which is basically either a selection into a college or a great marks, right? But in here, it might be a genuine interest. It might be a course to basically turn into an instructor ourselves, or it might be to basically monetize, or it might be just a hobby, right? So I think with such a wide diaspora of ambition and such a wide diaspora of subcategories, I don't think there will be one content format that will ever work out in space.
Fair enough. Do you see, for example, students paying more for non-academic like content that these tutors put out?
Yeah. So what we've seen is lesser number of percentage of folks would pay, but the average order value might be a little higher.
Might be higher. Got it.
So, but I think in general, the overall monies can be quite similar. But yes, like AOVs can be really high in this. But then again, the penetration into the audiences are very less if you, let's say, look at.
Got it. So yeah, it's great. If we're really down to the last 10 minutes, so to say, and I'm going to kind of ask you all the same question. So now I'm going to bring in the investor angle there, So each of you is, and Danish, you're early to this, but these two, Mukul's raised quite a bit of money. Mikhil getting there very soon, is read a boatload as well. But in your case, just take us a little bit through the challenges that you've had in your own way, maybe some of you less so, in communicating to investors. What's the reaction that you get? How have you been addressing that? Danish, you are very new to the game, so it'd be great to kind of hear from you, and then we'll go.
So I think for me, the biggest challenge is to convince or sort of paint this picture that the future, just like today, right? We have Harvard and MITs of the world, and then we have the IITs and IIMs, and then at the same time, there are one or two teachers who are absolutely amazing. Everybody wants to learn from them, like a Khan sir somewhere, right? So there is these extreme things. So either they are these huge institutions with big social credibility, and I think eventually the future of learning will be, there will always be a Baiju or somebody which is like a big platform which encompasses cohorts, which encompasses all sort of learning and pedagogy, and maybe a couple of those like that online. And there will always be vertical specific programs. So like if you want to learn basketball, like for example, I'll give you an example. Gary Kasparov launched GaryKasparovChess.com. And now it's the exact same concept, right? And there is another vertical specific program called the skills.com, which is only having sports people, including Michael Phelps and Olympians, who will be really getting deep into the sport. So I think the future probably would be, there is this one person who would be like a charisma school, where for all things charisma, one-stop shop, solving it completely from point A to point Z. So that's something is the future that I feel.
So got it. So are investors buying into this? Like, have you seen investors saying, "Yeah, we believe in vertical listing," or do investors prefer platforms? What's been the reactions? Or too early?
Yes, I think there are two kind of investors. I think angels, it's hard for them to buy. But VCs, like for example Blume or GSV and others like that, because they have a bigger understanding of the ecosystem and a global understanding of the ecosystem, they are buying it to an extent. Hopefully they will buy it completely soon.
Got it. Awesome. So Mikhil, just take us a little bit through the fundraising journey. I know it wasn't as hard for you as for the average one, but do take us through. challenges were. Yeah.
Fair. And fortunately, like, like as you already explained, it has not been very tough to communicate, like, what we have been building, because like, and pretty much like, what I was trying to explain during when I was like explaining the pricing and all, uh, the communication is very simple. There are more than 100 million people. If you just like talk to like 10 of your friends, 9 of them will say like, we work to put food on the table. But like, but this is, but we are actually like, the basic sense of like, the basic source of joy and happiness is like, lies in singing or dance. Like when I sing in a wedding, or like, when I try to crack a joke in a, in a party. So somehow like, these are not just like passions or hobbies. These are like, basic, like, what do you say, like the basic sense of identity for like 99% of India. And like, when you start thinking of this, and this is something which we have been like, communicating really well to all our investors, that like, when you start thinking of it in that way, the market is big. The market is big. Nobody has cracked it. I'll just like try to give you one example. Imagine the probability. Imagine like, you want to learn singing. Imagine the probability of finding the best teacher, the opportunity to learn with best peers, opportunity to have the best tool, the best pedagogy within 5 kilometers of your house, and like, at a such an affordable price. The probability is zero, literally zero. And that is something which has opened up. And like, when investors see that like, 30% of our users have never paid offline for these kind of classes, 10% of the users have never transacted on any e-commerce platform. That is something like which shows them that this is actually a much massier category. And this is, and also like, this is something which people have always been wanting to pay for. This is something which people have been at least wanting to spend time on, and they have not gotten a right platform to spend time on. So fortunately, it has not been tough, but I think what has evolved over time is even our thought. As Danish explained, like, initially we also thought like, we want to become a masterclass with some community-led angle. And then slowly, like, today I explained you like how we want to become a university. We actually want to replicate that. That is something which we have, like, all three of them, me, Shan and Shubhadat, as founders, and everybody as a team has grown, and that vision has grown into this. So I think that has been like, one growth, and like, investors have helped it, like multiple conversations have like, helped there. But fortunately, it has not been very tough to communicate the same to like, the other side of the table.
Oh, well put. Mukul, of course, it's gotten easier, but there have been tough times, early days. Want to take us through a little bit of the fundraising challenges and communicating to investors the proposition. In many ways, you're the pioneer. You started this Shopify for tutors first. So, want to take us through this?
I think the times at which we are fundraising today are very different from what it was 3 years back. Right?
Yeah.
And we've seen very, very different phases. I think we're lucky to have seen the two very extreme ends of thing. I think, but what has been constant over these 3 years has been that never did people ever say, or never did any VC ever say that they don't like this segment, right? What they very politely communicated to us was that what is the right model that can scale over it? And like, obviously, B2C comes very intuitively as a first option to that. But like outside that, and even in B2C, like what are the different segments? What are the different pricing models? I think over the last 1.5 years, I think the pandemic in itself has accelerated the market by at least 3 to 5 years. And when I say markets, both the consumer markets as well as the capital markets. And when both of them happened in tandem, which is a reality and which we are experiencing, obviously the industry moves very forward. And like there's renewed interest in people. People always wanted to do something in a segment that is coming out in place. There are so many entrepreneurs who are now finally taking a jump into Edtech. So I think, yes, it's been a very different experience. Explaining to people, for example, explaining to people why offline classrooms was important in 2018 was impossible because everyone believed that online is the new scale. But the moment the same folks stayed within their homes for 9 months and they said, no, we have to go offline because you really can't absorb that much in learning capacity. Similarly, educators who thought that they can never scale beyond 100, 200 students, they suddenly started believing that now, yes, we can actually deliver content and create engagement to a much greater scale using online. So I think the reception has been from both the fronts, both from the capital markets, both from the consumer markets. And we have seen both sides actually shatter some of their old biases and then adapt to what can actually be the future. So I think I don't look at fundraise as an independent activity. I think it's a culmination of various factors. And I think all of them have moved pretty nicely over the last 1.5 years. And I think we ourselves have raised like about 5 rounds of capital in the last 24 months. And I think a lot of that is during that, it's the same time. So yeah.
No, thank you for that. That was a kind of a great story, seeing both feast as well as famine. So this has been great. We've got, I think, audience has got a great flavor of what's happening in this buzzing subsector in India, and all of you are doing great work and taking. Danish, you are doing it, but the rest of you are taking academic and non-academic tutors online. So that's great work. Thank you so much for this session, and thank you for.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.